pricing guide for your work. The great dilemma almost every freelancer faces. How much should I charge for my freelancing work? Should I go for a fixed price or calculate an hourly rate? What if the client wants to negotiate? These types of questions can cause major headaches, and learning the best practices isn't always easy. But look no further, we're going to discuss the answers to your questions. First, calculate your living costs. Before looking at income, it's important to track your monthly expenses so you know what you should strive to earn at a minimum. There are lots of online calculators that track your expenses, even mobile apps, but a simple notepad can achieve the same results. First, list everything you can think of and be sure to revise your expenses as they change. That means rent, car insurance, gas, groceries, household bills, Adobe subscription, and anything else that's significant. Then add all your expenses together and you'll have a good idea of your minimum goal per month. Of course, you can always break down your monthly goal into a weekly goal by dividing it by 4, or figure out your yearly minimum by multiplying it by 12. Okay, now you have a minimum goal set up, let's talk about your options when working on projects. 1. Charging per project. First, the advantages. It's easy to understand for the customer, time tracking isn't necessary, it simplifies your calculations, and it allows you to take on multiple projects at once. If you work and complete projects fast, your quotes seem much more reasonable than if you were to translate them into an hourly rate. For example, I can create a magnificent homepage in less than 2 hours if I'm in the right mood. If I charge $1,000, which isn't a huge amount by any means, that would translate into an hourly rate of $500 per hour. That's silly considering the general price ranges from $25 to $55 per hour. But then you may ask yourself, why do I charge so much? And just in case your client raises that question too, you can tell him he's paying for the end product and for your expertise. It's not about how many hours you sweat over a design, it's about how great the design looks. The amount of work, training and education that's behind the design that allows you to work at a high pace is what justifies the price. I'm very confident my work will boost sales and business, so I have no second thoughts about my asking prices. Now the drawbacks. Difficult customers might use this to their advantage to get you to do more work. Expect an increase in the duration of your projects. Expect a demand for multiple revisions and/or drafts. Timeframes are very unreliable. It requires a strong grip on the customer relationship. Let's see an example of some number crunching on a per project basis. Minimum quote per project, $500. Living expenses per year, $1,000 times 12 is $12,000. Minimum projects per year, 24. Minimum projects per month, 2. This is just a rough example with random numbers. Once you apply accurate real-world calculations, you'll end up with a nice figure to help you track your income versus your expenses. Unforeseen additional work. Work that wasn't included in the original brief is something that's requested from time to time, and it's important to know how to manage it. Make sure you always quote exactly what the client expects to see in the final deliverables. For example, if you're working on a web design project, then include the exact number of pages and the exact features that will be included. Things like pop-ups, forms, logos, intermediate pages may not be included in the client's original brief, and it's up to you to foresee these additional features and address them before you start working. It's important to fully understand the project before you set a quote. It's okay to ask for additional information to ensure you know what the client is expecting. A typical quote would be something like this: price for one homepage plus one services page as seen in the wireframes means $1,500, excluding any transfer fees, 30% up front. I provide unlimited revisions, but all with common sense. The first homepage draft will be ready in 48 hours. After each page is approved, you will make the payment and then you will receive the layered PSD file, well organized and labeled, ready to be sliced and coded. You will also receive any custom fonts I may have used. Stock images are not included in the price. After approval, I will provide several options for you to purchase them. Until the final designs, you will see stock images that are not yet bought, so they will have watermarks on them. Those are for the site's protection and can't be removed. If you have any questions, please let me know. As soon as you make the initial payment, I'll get started. Payment can be made via PayPal or wire transfer. And here I'd give out all my payment information. So as you can see, things are clear, in writing, without parts that are overly complicated. In case things go south, you can always refer back to this email. Now let's take a look at the second option, charging per hour. The advantages. Generally, clients use your time more wisely. You have a more relaxed approach on your projects. It cuts down on the number of revisions. Timeframes are usually more reliable. Additional tasks not included in the initial brief aren't a big deal. The drawbacks. It requires time tracking and a reliable way to let your client know how much you're actually working. Limits your ability to juggle multiple projects. Requires strict living expense calculations. Seems less trustful to smaller clients who may not believe your number of hours quoted. Here's an example of calculations on a per-hour basis. 365 days minus 104 weekends minus 14 holidays minus 7 sick days equals 240 working days in a year. 8 hours per day times 240 equals 1,920 maximum billable hours in a year. Let's say you're working on projects a conservative 40% of that time. 1,920 times 0.4 is 768 billable hours. Living expenses per year, $1,000 times 12 is $12,000. Minimum hourly rate, $12,000 divided by 768 is $15.60 per hour. Again, this is a rough example with random numbers, but it can help you when you apply accurate real-world calculations. In general, you can expect to see quotes starting from $15 per hour all the way up to $55. In some cases, it can be more, but usually that's the standard interval. Additional work doesn't really harm you when you're working on an hourly rate. You might actually welcome it. It might have an impact on your scheduling, yet additional work is great news if your calculations are on point. A word of advice, always be sure you write every additional request down. Next, we'll talk about handling negotiations. You should always set your quote at the beginning of a project, never at the end. Though that seems super common sense, some people still don't follow it. From my personal experience, negotiating has its place in a lot of situations, but not in freelancing. It's important to portray a trustworthy image by being transparent and quoting fair prices. You should be able to deconstruct your quote based on your assessment of the project, your skill level, the deadline, etc. And if the client still isn't happy, then they're not the right person for you. You're not selling second-hand cars, so you don't need to strike deals or bargains with the client. You should be a professional that's asking for a fair price, no exceptions. Next on the list is protecting your work. That's a tricky situation, but let's take it step by step. First of all, you can use a contract. It should be simple and brief, otherwise your clients might be intimidated by it. But unless it's a 20-page novel, you have nothing to worry about. There are several guides and examples of contracts used for web design, and I'll include links to them so you can check them out. If you're in it for the long run, a contract lowers the chances of getting ripped off. And how can that happen? For starters, if you send over the original source files, the PSDs, before you get paid, then you're risking it. Never ever release the PSD file, no matter what the client tells you. Things like my coder has to check if it's layered and organized, or I might want to do some final edits. Cut all this talk down by reminding your client that you will help out in case the coder has issues with the PSD. This includes guiding him through the folders in the PSD, creating elements you might have missed like drop-downs or hover states, but that doesn't mean doing extra things that weren't in the brief. Besides not releasing the project source files, you might want to watermark your JPEGs when you send them to your client. It's not ideal because it's a bit annoying. Here's an example of how a watermarked design should look. Make sure your text opacity is really low. Alternatively, you can use all sorts of patterns, but I prefer to have my name and contact information in clear. Why would you do this? Well, if you send high-quality PNG files, an experienced coder can recreate your site with 60 to 90% accuracy depending on his skill and your design. It's a horrible thing to experience. Even if you watermark your design and you have a contract, you're still not 100% safe. I've seen clients hire third-world designers for $50 to recreate a design in Photoshop based on watermarked images. It's a real shame when that happens. I had a case like this, but upon seeing the watermark, I said no, as you should too. We should look out for each other even if we don't have a personal relationship. So in essence, yes, anybody that sets his mind to it can steal your design, or at least your layout, colour scheme, design ideas and so on. If you think that's bad, imagine how I feel when my course gets torrented after I've worked 7 months on it. Anyway, let's sum this part up. Don't release your source files before you get paid. Get a contract and watermark your drafts. In conclusion to the whole lecture, it's really up to you whether you'd like to charge by project or by an hourly rate. What's really important is to track your living expenses accurately and adjust your calculations accordingly. My personal recommendation is to keep a fair and transparent price at all times, avoid any negotiations, and charge by the project since it's easier for the client to accept your quote. It also allows you to multitask among several projects, and that will help you in your quest for speed.